Briggs from South Australia in the Monza. Had bad luck yesterday and is back on the track today after going off the circuit. We might take a recap and have a look at this from another angle. That was Kevin Bartlett being drilled as Murray Carter went for the outside edge. Amongst all the smoke, Kevin kept the throttle going, but Murray took off with one of his flares.
Right, we're running through the field for the Patra Sports Sedan Challenge, and we got up to Gary Rogers in car number 34. Next is car number 15, Jim Richards.
Well, it's not raining today, but it doesn't make any difference because Jim Richards in the Big Pie-sponsored Falcon is always a man to beat. He had problems here yesterday, but he's sure to go well here today.
Car number 17
is Brad Jones in the new Mercedes Sports Sedan. Promises plenty of potential with a 43.2.
And great to see this guy back on the track here at Calder, car number 8.
Yes, John McCormick, the South Australian open-wheeler and touring car driver who had a bad accident last year, coming to this meeting, was involved in a road accident, has been out of action ever since. He's back today in the Jag, the Unipart Jag, with a 43.8.
Another Commodore is car number 12.
That's Tony Parkinson, practiced yesterday at 45 even.
Car 6
is John Chambers in a Monza with a 45.7.
And in a Tirana, car number 43.
John Lusty, 46 even.
Car number 16.
Peter Finch in a Monaro at 46.3.
In car number 11.
Tony Hubbard in another Tirana, 47 seconds.
Quite a big field, car number 23.
Luigi De Luca in the Ford Anglia, 47.1.
Car number 42 is next on the grid.
That's Ken James in the RX-3 Mazda, 48.2.
Car number 26
is Tony Dark in the Tirana, 49.8.
And speaking of sixes, car 66.
Kevin Freeman, winner of the consolation race yesterday. Tirana XU1, 49.8 also.
Next is an Escort, car number 29.
Mike Jacobson, 49.9.
Another Tirana, car number 31.
Was Frank Brown at 50 seconds even.
And a Capri, car 51.
Steve Craig at 50.4.
In 67.
Mike Emery in a Monaro, 51.3.
Another RX-3 is car 47.
That, of course, is Richard Warland in the RX-3 Mazda, 52.1 to him yesterday.
Our final three at Gemini, car number 30.
Colin Prestigier in the Gemini, 53.8.
And a Toyota, car 94.
Morris Harper at 54.3.
And an E.H. Holden,
68. Terry Wilson, 76.1. Just a little off the pace by about 34 seconds.
I think if you can take a shot at those times, then we could probably be concentrating on about the first 3 or 4 cars off the grid. The rest, certainly on the times they recorded yesterday, Mike, wouldn't have too many chances at all. Okay, you're watching the 46th National Panasonic Australian Grand Prix meeting live from Calder, and we'll be back in just a moment for more trackside action. Just about set to get underway for our next event here from Calder, the Patra Sports Sedan Challenge, as we welcome to the 7 Sport microphone again, Peter Brock. And Peter, congratulations on a great drive.
Thanks, Pete. It was a pretty hard day, actually, because that track is very, very slippery, very oily. And
already,
I think we're in for some fireworks. Maybe not from these cars as much as the Formula Pacific cars, but the way the track's looking to me, I think we're in for a very interesting 100-lapper, and all those viewers out there, don't go away, because that's going to be a boom of a race.
You didn't, I guess, see the slight mishap between Murray Carter and Kevin Bartlett?
No, I saw some shrapnel on the circuit, and someone told me it's a piece of KB's vehicle, so KB's fairly adept at leaving shrapnel here and there.
Well, it was Murray Carter that was involved and not Ron Wanler, so we suggested that Murray should go back to the pits and lock himself inside the car.
Well, Murray's probably more Kevin's size. I think he's about 5'4" and about 7 stone. But I almost had a gigantic moment myself, actually, with brakes overheating and the rear shock absorbers playing up, a bit like Dick Johnson had a problem at Sandown, the Hang 10 a few weeks ago. And I thought I was in for a gigantic spin in front of the field, but luck was with me and managed to stay on the circuit. But yeah, hard race with Dick Johnson.
Right, well, let's get back to the race at hand at the moment. And Bob Jane in car number 7, having pole position. Tony Edmondson in car number 1, next to him. There was 0.6 of a difference in their qualifying times yesterday. Bob Jane in the Monza, Tony Edmondson in the Alfa. Away they go.
I think it's a great idea, this starting procedure too. It's introduced for Formula 1, of course. We probably mentioned this so far, and as a driver for the first time I found it fabulous, because the car was warm, the tyres were warm, and it was very straightforward, just like taking up a set of traffic lights in the middle of the city. And I think it's safer, and it's less chance of the driver jumping the start, quite frankly.
That's the man we'll be watching during the race, Bob Jane, who certainly should know this track pretty well. We said during our commentary, Pete, that you could just about drive it with your eyes shut. Well, if you could do that, I'm sure Bob could.
Yeah, I reckon that Bob Jane must have done more laps of this circuit than anyone else, and he is super competitive at this circuit, there's no doubt about it. And that particular car there, I would say, represents probably twice the cost of perhaps Alan Jones's car. He's going into the pits there for some unknown reason.
Yes, so that's most unusual.
Interesting.
Jane, sorry, Peter.
His mechanics are as bewildered as we are. Pat Purcell walking down there thinking, oh, what's the boss doing?
Well, Edmondson lined up on the grid position, number 2.
No. Well, Pat's rushing now to pick up, he's got a can with something in it. I see he's trying to start the engine there. Looks like he's spraying it down the injector trumpets. And Bob's firing it up at this stage, or trying to.
Oh, and Jimmy Richards in the Pie sponsored car decides he's going for broke. He jumps the start, so that's going to be I think if it's a minute for a normal offence, that'll be 2 of the best. So Jim Richards obviously wants to get his sponsor's Pie up on front on the telly, and he's done a good job of it. He's jumped the start, and he leads Tony Edmondson as they come down General Credit's back straight. Gary Rogers is in there, and look at John Briggs really coming on strong in the Black Monza.
In the meantime, Bob Jane, car number 7, who had pole position, is still in the pits, and Bob is getting out of the car at the moment, and I would reckon would be a pretty disappointed boy.
Yes, he's putting his cap back on. He's going to watch to see how the rest of the boys do. So,
okay, we've had one off over on the
Mercedes.
Yes, that's Brad Jones in the Mercedes. It's come off the circuit, and it has in fact inverted the machine. Picked them up going down towards Valvoline, and I think it's Tony Edmondson who has taken over the lead. Even if Jimmy had stayed out there.
Jim Richards is retiring off the end of the circuit. He's pulling slowly to the left-hand side, just out of camera shot.
Well, that's a sensation. Another one.
Corner, yes. Now, perhaps, no, he couldn't have been involved, Brad Jones. He's too far ahead of him, so I'd say they're unrelated incidents.
I think Jim Richards was having problems with the motor yesterday and was not terribly confident about the fact of finishing today, which may have had something to do with the jumping at the start and getting the sponsor's name up front.
Certainly stole the limelight at the start of the race, but Jim Richards in a good deal of bother, but our leader is Tony Edmondson.
So it's fairly academic that they do disqualify or penalise Jim Richards, because he penalised himself at least that amount. He's slowly coming back to the pits.
Okay, Tony Edmondson leads coming along General Credit's back straight. Great dice for second though. John Briggs in the Black Monza, and Gary Rogers in that pretty nifty Tirana right in behind him.
And in 4th position would be car number 8, the McCormick Unipart team of John McCormick. And looking next would be Tony Parkinson, and coming up behind him would be car number 16, Peter Fitch.
Okay, out of Glow Weave, heading on to front straight. Tony Edmondson really running away from them. Boy, doesn't that little machine move.
Jim Richards in car number 15 now coming into the pits to join Bob Jane there, and we believe he was penalised 1 minute, but as you mentioned, Peter, that's an academic interest only at the moment.
Yes. One car I'd like to talk about on the track there is Gary Rogers' car, a very conventional car compared to the other ones.
Car number 34.
34, yes. He's right behind John Briggs, giving him a terrific run for his money. Now, Briggs' car is a pretty lightweight car with fully independent suspension, and the car that Gary Rogers has is a very conventional, old-fashioned style sports sedan with a live rear axle like that of a conventional Falcon or Holden, and it does remarkably well, as you can see in this shot here. He's really behind Briggs. He's lacking the speed down the straight, but by gee, he's making up with, you know, a lot of aggression in the corners.
Coming into Valvoline, you can see how Gary Rogers closes up. 34 is Rogers. Just in front of him is John Briggs. We've had one search of the Armco on the around the circuit. It's difficult to pick up. Looking for the old rally course. It's not there anymore.
Yes, that's a Tirana-based car, I believe, which Tony Hubbard's car, I believe.
Back to the dice for second place between John Briggs in the Chevrolet Monza, Gary Rogers in the Tirana, and then you can see Tony Edmondson just ahead of them, really stretching it. Can't help but think what a great power to weight ratio that machine of Edmondson's is.
Absolutely superbly put together. When you compare it to the Pacific cars, it doesn't really leave much out.
Right, 5 laps gone of the 25 lap Sports Sedan Challenge. Here's Evan Green.
Jim Richards sitting on the pit wall. What happened, Jim?
Well, amazing enough, jammed in second gear through the S's, and I couldn't get it out of second gear, so I had to just come around and come into the pits.
And you're out of the race?
Yes.
Bob Jane is up there. He too was out of the race before it started, had engine trouble. It shows you how much people get involved. His mechanics were in tears. They were so upset, and Bob was trying to comfort them. There's a lot riding on this, isn't there?
Well, they work on them so long and hard for so long, especially in Bob's case. He doesn't race that often, and with them going so well in practice, I suppose they're expecting a win, so it would be very disappointing.
Okay, back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. We come back to the race where we pick up on Tony Edmondson, still leading from John Briggs in the Monza. Gary Rogers is third.
Fourth position is car number 8, that's John McCormack. In fifth position is car number 12, that's Tony Parkinson. And in position number 6, car number 16, Peter Finch in the yellow Holden Monaro.
Through Glowweave. Car number 1 is our race leader.
Yeah, Edmondson isn't hanging about either. I just clocked him at a 42.2 on my wristwatch that particular lap, and that's within 4/10 of his qualifying time, so he's certainly giving the boys behind something to work for.
Okay, we had one out amongst the tulips on the back straight, managing to park it over there. One that was in a...
It's Tony Parkinson and his Commodore.
And he was running in the top 5.
He was in 6th position, actually, Mike.
In 6th, I was one out. The track record, or the sports sedan record, held here by, of course, Bob Jane, 41.8. Tony Edmondson qualified yesterday at exactly that, 41.8. So we'll see as this race progresses whether we can put one together.
Went out in the warm-up lap, the car was fine, and in the second warm-up lap, it cut out down the back straight, just wouldn't run. So after the car's run perfectly for, what, 3 days, it's quite amazing, absolutely amazing.
It must be a shattering blow. Your mechanic was in tears. You must have a lot of loyalty in that team.
Well, Pat, for me, I've been working pretty hard today, but Pat's been working for about a month or more on the car, and he's put every night and every day into it, and it was running so beautifully. So it's very frustrating for him as well as me.
Gary Rogers, in the meantime, is back out on the track and is back once again to central commentary position.
Okay, thanks, Evan. And Bob Jane, obviously very disappointed, but more so his top mechanic, Pat Purcell, as he said. Spent night and day on the car. It looks a treat, but unfortunately it didn't get going today, and still our race leader, Tony Edmondson, and doing it well. He's leading at the moment. In second place is car number 9, John Briggs. Third place is car number 8, John McCormack now in third position. In fourth position, car 12, Tony Parkinson. Position number 5, car 16, Peter Finch.
Tony Edmondson, and once again, number 6 in problems, John Chambers.
And a little bit of a fire under there.
Afterburner.
Yes, maybe the grass could be in danger of going up out there. It's a bit long.
The best thing to do in that situation is keep winding on that starter motor and hope she starts, because it's raw fuel, of course, coming out the exhaust. And
I think
looks bad.
I think he's called it a day, has he? No, he's going for another push. Really had some problems for John Chambers and the Chevy Monza. Actually, it's quite surprising that John Briggs has made it today, because he went off in practice yesterday against the guardrail on the back straight. Replay coming up of the incident, and there you can see Chambers getting it around sideways and backing it off the course. So not really a problem, and then you got an idea then of the speed of Tony Edmondson in the Alfetta, the V8, big scoop on the front. Really puts 1010's motoring into his racing. At the moment, we've got 12 laps remaining. Second place still being held down by John Briggs. Gary Rogers has rejoined the race.
John McCormack in third place. Tony Edmondson, our race leader, as he has been for a number of laps. Let's hear what he has to say about his part in motor racing.
Sports sedan champion is Tony Edmondson, and that's him out there doing his stuff. Tony, how important to you is this race?
Very important, Evan. Every race I go in, I consider it's an important race, and I try to win it. Although we've won the championship and this $50,000 series for the year, I still regard it as a very important race. Winning is all important.
How do you feel about the fellas out there with you?
As always, Bob Jane and John Briggs are always very, very quick and very, very difficult to beat. Bob's a little bit faster than his Sorrento yesterday in qualifying, but hopefully during the race we'll be able to peg him back.
He had a terrible accident some years ago and got badly burnt. Does that ever come into your mind?
No, with all due respect, it's something that the journalists only ever bring up. I don't think about it at all.
only thing that Tony Edmondson will be thinking of at the moment is he has 10 circuits remaining and he looks to have this one locked up. The Patra 3DB Sports Sedan Challenge here at Calder this afternoon.
I wonder if a lot of the viewers really understand what's underneath the bonnet of that car.
It's not your average Alpha.
It's not your 2-litre Alfetta, no. It's a 5-litre engine, originally developed using a Holden block by Repco in the late 60s, which puts out about 500 odd horsepower. In fact, I'm sorry, it's now fitted a Chevrolet motor, of course. And so it's about 550 brake horsepower. So Frank Weiss developed engine for the Can-Am in America with a Hewlett transaxle in the rear end. It's very much like the Formula 5000 cars as far as power's concerned, and probably about 400 pound odd heavier. So that accounts for its terrific acceleration and top speed. It would be probably, I want to guess and say about 60 or 70 kilometres an hour faster than the Formula Pacifics down the straight here. But of course it is slower because it doesn't corner as well.
And how much engine setback would he have from, say, the front axle?
Well, the entire intake trumpets of the V8 engine are inside the cabin area, and on a close-up shot there you can actually see that Tony's actually sitting beside that engine, and there's remote control to the gear shift, which is down the back of the car, but it's all mechanical inside the car, but it's beautifully finished.
Comments from Peter Brock as we watch Tony Edmondson around the Calder circuit with less than 8 laps to go now. The Patra Sports Sedan Challenge.
Cool this afternoon with some showers coming in, as a matter of fact, but it doesn't look that way at the moment.
And you live in Melbourne, you should know better than that.
Yes, I listen to the Channel 7 weather, of course, Pete, and I take it verbatim and think, well, they know what they're talking about, but of course, what's your comment?
Actually, on a hot day, Pete, with the suits on, and even a 25-lap race, how much, you'd lose a fair bit in perspiration, wouldn't you?
Well, I've come straight from that last race, and I hopped out of it feeling reasonably cool, not too bad, but I'm sitting here beside you perspiring fairly heavily, and I could guarantee you I'd lose about 2 pounds in that race.
What about during the James Hardy 1000 of the race if you drive the full distance?
Well, I reckon last weekend at Surfers Paradise, a very hot, close, humid day, probably about in the mid-90s in humidity, and about, I suppose it must be about 27 degrees. I lost about 6 pounds.
Really?
And totally dehydrated, and you've got to be very, very careful you don't become ill afterwards, because the body salts and what have you are all mixed up, and you've really got to take a lot of salts and what have you to make up for it.
We noticed, we mentioned during your race, Pete, about the problems of last weekend, and after driving that distance and doing it quite comfortably the last few laps, and only to find out it's been taken off you and you've lost it by 3 seconds.
Yes.
What ran through your mind? I remember seeing it on the telecast. You didn't believe it at first.
First I knew about it, as a matter of fact, and I saw Alan Moffat at the airport coming back on Monday, and I said, Al, I guarantee you couldn't believe your good fortune when it all happened. He said, I couldn't believe what were you doing, Brock? What was happening? I said, well, I thought it was a mile in front. Dick Johnson had crashed out of the race, and I had nothing else to worry about. And lo and behold, I stopped the race thinking, well, I sneaked in there pretty well today. That was a good run. And the commentator said, I'm sorry, but Moffat won. I just said, oh, rubbish. You don't know what you're talking about. He knew all right. But there is an appeal in at the moment. But we're not particularly concerned about the outcome of that race, because financially it's not really worth very much. What we do want is to have a very clear-cut issue for 1982. For instance, that 1-minute penalty does not apply at Oran Park, Amory Park, Bathurst, Calder Raceway, Adelaide Raceway.
It's not across the board anyway.
Well, that's right, but it has been common law, as you would say. It's been common law in Australian racing for 2 years, and well, it was just unfortunate, I suppose, the way it turned out.
Let's check the official placings now. Still, our race leader is car number 1, Tony Edmondson, by 10 seconds from car number 9. That's John Briggs. A further 24 seconds to car number 8 in third place. That's John McCormick. Here's the pits, Evan Green.
And walking back without a car, Gary Rogers. Gary, what happened?
We ran out of fuel pressure, Evan. The car was going exceptionally well, and John Briggs balked me early, but I was sort of hanging in there in third, and the car was going really well. But just about 4 laps ago, it ran out of fuel pressure coming into the front straight. I idled in here, and by the time I got here, the pressure had built up again, and we got going again, but it's done it again, and there's no sense going on at this stage.
You hurt yourself at Bathurst in that crash at the end of the race. Had your leg been playing up?
It doesn't when I drive, Evan. It's stiff and sore, and it's a bit sort of walk on, but I can drive the car okay, and, you know, today's one of those unfortunate things, but...
Another of the stars, then, that have come back to the pits in a fairly sad state. That to you, Peter.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Evan. Well, Peter Brock, you were spot on. A heat-related problem with the fuel.
Yes, and they require a fuel pressure of around about 100 psi in order for the fuel injection system to work. And it's very, very critical that you keep the fuel supply up. It vaporises very easily. And today, of course, that added few degrees Celsius, you run into this problem.
Well, we're watching Tony Edmondson now, and he's got, well, just on 2 laps to go, or in fact less than that, before he gets the checkered flag for the Patra Sports Sedan Challenge here at Calder. There he goes, 1 lap to go.
Tony Edmondson looking good, has led it all the way.
Yes, and he's certainly cleared out from John Briggs, who at this stage is only entering the main straight. And as we see, Edmondson just clipping the curb and using all the road up the back straight. But he won't be backing off too much. He'll be trying to keep his concentration up.
There's Briggs. John Briggs going to place second in this. Had a few moments yesterday in qualifying. A little skatey in the tail there.
Yes. And Tony Edmondson almost... Oh, well, those things happen, of course.
Lost an A30. Okay, final corner, glow weave, the checkered flag about to be unfolded, and Tony Edmondson will go on and take the Patra 3DB Sports Sedan Challenge race here at Calder this afternoon.
John Briggs will come in second, or he should come in second, in car number 9.
And we have John McCormick, who I congratulate for coming back, because when I saw him about, I don't know, must have been 6 months ago, he was certainly a pretty sore and sorry man, and to have come back, I think, congratulations to him. He's shown a lot of willpower.
Yeah, great effort by John, and he's always been a favourite here too at Calder Raceway. Car number 8 is John McCormick, and he will come in 3rd place.
Here's John McCormick after that bad accident, road accident last year, the comeback drive, and he notches a 3rd.
And a big hand from the crowd here at Calder too. Well done, John McCormick. Great to see him back in action.
But a severe